Let me say this right at the start. If you've been feeling unmotivated lately, if work feels heavier than it used to, if starting the day feels harder than it should, I don't think you're lazy. I don't think you suddenly lost discipline. I don't think you woke up one day and just stopped caring. And I don't think this means you're broken. I think a lot of capable people are experiencing something they don't have good language for yet. So they're calling it lack of motivation. But that label doesn't actually explain what's happening. And the reason I wanted to make this video is because I keep hearing the same thing from people in completely different jobs, industries, different stages of life, people who used to be reliable, people who used to push themselves, people who used to take pride in doing things well. They all describe this quiet shift. They say things like, I still show up, but it feels different. I'm doing the work, but I don't feel connected to it. I don't recognize myself anymore. That's not a motivation problem. It's something deeper. Now, I want to pause for a second and say, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not here to diagnose anyone. I'm just someone who's been in this place too. There were times like when I would take vacations and genuinely expect things to feel different when I came back, but I found that for the weeks leading up to taking a vacation, it was all I was thinking about. Counting the weekends until vacation, counting my remaining shifts, counting down the hours on the last day, and even checking out a couple hours early on that last day. It felt like following what everyone tells you to do. Take some time off, re-energize, but then I'd return, or even just think about returning, and I realized I was right back where I started. Same weight, same resistance, and that same quiet sense that something wasn't lining up. And when that kept happening, it was really easy to assume that the problem had to be me. What I eventually realized, both personally and from listening to a lot of other people, is that this feeling gets mislabeled all the time. So if you need professional help, that matters. But what I'm doing here isn't therapy. I'm just trying to put words to an experience that a lot of capable people quietly carry. And we probably don't talk about it enough. I think that sometimes just having the language for it is the first thing that helps. So when people say that they're unmotivated, they don't usually mean that they actually want to do nothing. They will get up, they'll still log in, they still meet deadlines, they still do what's required. What's missing isn't effort, what's missing is engagement. It feels harder to care, harder to invest emotionally, harder to believe that pushing a little bit more will actually change anything. And that's confusing, especially if you've always been someone who did push. If you were the person who took responsibility, stayed late, tried to do things right, did all the things that you're supposed to do. And when that internal drive fades, the mind starts kind of searching for a reason. And the most obvious explanation that most people come up with is, something has to be wrong with me. Now, once that idea takes hold, a quiet sort of shame loop starts to begin. You start telling yourself things like, I should just be grateful, other people have it worse, I'm just being dramatic, I need to get it together. So instead of questioning the situation, you're actually questioning yourself. You try to force motivation, you add routines, you tighten schedules. You try to sort of discipline your way back to that energy. And when that doesn't work, the shame only deepens. Because now it's not just exhaustion, it's disappointment in yourself for being exhausted. That is a heavy place to live. And there's another reason people get so disappointed by this feeling. They try to do the right thing, they rest, they take time off, they use vacation days, they unplug, they sleep more, and they expect something very reasonable to happen. They expect motivation to come back. But it doesn't always do that. And that's unsettling because rest is supposed to work. Rest is what we're told fixes burnout. So when you rest and still feel heavy, the assumption becomes, okay, now it really must be me. But here's the part people don't say clearly enough. Rest restores energy. It does not restore meaning. You can sleep, you can relax, you can take a week off. But if you're returning to the same environment, the same uncertainty, the same lack of clarity, the same feeling that effort doesn't go anywhere, your nervous system already knows that. So it doesn't re-engage. It's not because rest failed, it's because rest was never meant to solve that problem. When people say things like, I took time off and it didn't help, or I rested and I still don't want to go back, they often interpret that as like laziness or entitlement. But what it usually means is this. Rest gave you enough space to feel what work normally keeps you too busy to notice. And once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. A lot of people discover during rest that the dread comes back before work even starts. The stress returns the moment Sunday night hits. The anxiety isn't about exhaustion, it's about return. That's an important signal because if rest were the problem, then rest would solve it. When rest doesn't help, it usually means that the issue isn't fatigue, it's fit. So this is also why advice like just take more time off or you just need a break can feel strangely invalidating because people have taken breaks. They didn't come back refreshed, they came back aware that something about the structure, expectations, or lack of direction isn't sitting right anymore. That awareness can feel worse than exhaustion. Now here's the part I want to say carefully. This doesn't mean you should quit your job. It doesn't mean something dramatic needs to happen. It doesn't mean rest is useless. It means rest did its job. It removed the noise. And what you're left with is information. Information about whether effort feels safe, effort feels meaningful, effort feels connected to anything real. Motivation doesn't come back just because you're rested. It comes back when effort feels like it has a place to land. A lot of people blame themselves for this moment. They think, why can't I just be happy? Why can't I just accept this? Why can't I just be motivated like I used to be? But what they're really experiencing is clarity, and clarity isn't always comfortable. If rest didn't fix this for you, that doesn't mean you somehow failed at resting. It means that rest revealed something, and that something deserves curiosity at least, not self-punishment. This is important. What people are experiencing now doesn't feel like the burnout we used to talk about. Traditional burnout sounded like, I'm working too hard, I need rest. This feels more like, I'm working, but it doesn't feel like it leads anywhere. People take time off and they don't feel restored. They rest and the heaviness returns as soon as they think about going back. That's because rest restores energy, it does not restore meaning. The environment you return to still feels unpredictable, unstable, unclear, or emotionally unsafe, and your motivation has nowhere to attach. So here's the reframing I want to offer. Motivation doesn't disappear just because people are weak. It disappears when effort stops producing reliable feedback. Humans are wired to respond to things like progress, predictability, cause and effect, and those types of gratifications. When you can't tell what actually matters, what's rewarded, what leads somewhere, what's just noise, your brain starts conserving that energy. Not because you don't care, but because it's trying to protect you from wasting effort. That conservation looks like disengagement, procrastination, numbness, and we label that as a lack of motivation. And there's another layer people rarely say out loud, and that's replaceability. Even when no one explicitly threatens your job, many people feel replaceable. They feel like if they disappeared, the system would just move on. Loyalty isn't really rewarded, experience doesn't guarantee security, doing extra doesn't buy safety. That creates a constant low-level tension because investing in something that feels temporary is exhausting. So your mind pulls back. It stops offering full engagement as a form of self-protection. It's not laziness, it's survival. Now, you'll often hear advice like, just be grateful you have a job. And gratitude can be healthy, but gratitude also does not create motivation. Often it creates silence because now you feel like you're not allowed to say, this isn't working for me. So instead of exploring what's wrong, you suppress it. And suppressed dissatisfaction doesn't disappear. It turns into numbness. You keep functioning, but without enthusiasm, curiosity, or hope. So here's the part I want to say very clearly. If you're feeling this way, you're not alone, and that matters. Because when large numbers of capable people across industries describe the same emotional experience, that's a pattern, not a personal defect. Many modern systems ask for flexibility without stability, ask for performance without clarity, ask for loyalty without commitment in return. People sense that, even if they can't articulate it. And your lack of motivation might be your mind recognizing something your words haven't caught up to yet. So this feeling you get, it's not like a command. It's not saying quit everything. It's not saying you failed. It's more saying pay attention. It's information. It's your internal signal that effort as currently structured doesn't feel meaningful or safe. You don't need to fix that tonight. You don't need a plan, and you don't need to just run off and try to optimize yourself. So I didn't make this video to tell you what to do next. I made it so you'd stop assuming something is wrong with you. Feeling unmotivated doesn't automatically mean you're lazy, you're broken, you need a new personality. Sometimes it means the environment you're in isn't giving your effort anywhere to land. That's not a moral failure, that's information. If any of this resonated with you, you are not alone, and you're not weak for noticing. Sometimes clarity comes before direction, and that's okay.